So I'm here with the lovely Heather Pfeiffer, my dear friend, running buddy, fellow mom, family practitioner, um, super shiny star in my life. And so hi.
Hi, good morning.
Thanks for being here and for being
Yeah,
willing to talk about parenting.
yeah.
So I want to start out by just throwing out there, when I say the word motherhood, like what comes to mind? Motherhood is,
First thing is giving. That's the first thing I think of. Giving,
mhm.
lots of giving. Um, yep. And hard and a gift, a gift. Yeah.
I think motherhood is a burnt sugar cookie.
Yeah, I
and
like
socks
it.
and socks on the floor.
Socks on the floor. And I don't think it's said enough. I think when I was pregnant, I should back up. I didn't get married till I was in my 30s, and then didn't have my first son until I was mid 30s. And I felt like I was surrounded by a lot of this is just so amazing. And, it's just so, and just pregnancy and breastfeeding and motherhood, just all this positivity, which is lovely. But I felt like there was not room when I was experiencing it to be like, it's that, but it's also like sometimes not so great. And sometimes I don't like it, or sometimes I don't feel great, or sometimes I wish, like, my legs hurt right now, or I just want to read for an hour and have no one talk. Like, I felt like there wasn't space for that. And I, ended up having a friend who was pregnant at the same time, and we were each other's space for that. But I came away from that. And now, my oldest being 12, thinking, and try to incorporate this in my own practice, is like just having space for that, having space for, you get to say that. It can be amazing, but you get to also say that it's the burnt cookie part, right? Like you get to, and that doesn't mean, there's anything wrong with you. It means let's talk about it. And I think lots of women feel that way.
The first few months of infancy,
Mm-hmm.
most women, or many women, I should say, describe it as the loneliest time of their life.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that happens where there's all of this attention on the mom to be and the baby to come. And then when you have your baby and you get lost in the depths of early stage motherhood, and you're not sleeping and it's kind of dark all the time and you don't know what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're often kind of emotionally distanced from your partner, maybe because you're both undergoing the hugest identity shifts of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't remember to call people back, and people don't know how to support you. And suddenly, like, the mom kind of floats to the background,
And
and
your
they're
body is, yeah.
betraying you and hurting and
Mm-hmm.
tired and leaking and
Yeah.
awkward
Yeah.
and hard. And the baby is hard, right? Lovely and amazing, and
Yeah.
also just hard and exhausting. That time feels really, really lonely, because the narrative out there, like you said, is that you'll be in so much love, like birds will be singing and stars will be dancing, and it will
Yeah.
just be this glorious moment, and it's often not. um,
Yeah.
and then moms
I
think
would,
that there's something wrong with them, that they're
oh,
doing it
yeah.
wrong, or they're not in love with their baby in the right way, or that they're not meant to be a mother, or that something is broken about them.
It's interesting because, of course, I do family practice. So I take care of a lot of new babies and new families. And I have come to incorporate in my practice, when I have that first well child checks, the gauntlet, that first 2 weeks, right? And one of the things that I've found that has been so effective in sort of starting my relationship with these new parents and really getting them to understand my style of practice, but also is this idea of saying just what you said. I will just say out loud, because I know they're not ready to admit that narrative, that this is really, really, really hard. And I'll say the words because I know they're feeling them, and I'll say it. This is hard, and it's amazing, and this is a beautiful thing that you've done, and look at this human being, but gosh, you must be tired, and gosh, your body is not what you thought, where it was before. And just naming the emotions, which of course is so valuable in all of life. And then they'll just all look at me. Often everybody's crying because everybody's sleep deprived, and just naming them, and they all just, relax and are like, oh, thank God, here's a safe space for us to talk about this. And now this will always be a safe space. Right. And I think that's so important, not just with people you see that are professionals, but also people in your life, is making sure that you are around and surrounded by people that give you that space, because it's all there. It's all valuable.
Why do you think it's so hard in our culture to talk about how hard parenting is? I mean, one of the secrets that comes out in therapy with new parents is that they'll kind of, after a few sessions, when they're starting to trust me, will like sneak in, sometimes I don't like my kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I don't like parenting. Sometimes I wonder what I got myself into. And there's so much shame behind those words. And I have never met a parent that liked their kid 100% of the time. We love them, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But liking them and liking parenting is not a thing that we're going to like all the time. But it's so hard to admit that out.
It's like a lot. I think it's a soup. I think a lot of things go into that, but it starts with this idea, I think, that is cultural to a certain extent, where vulnerability is not okay. Vulnerability is weakness. Vulnerability is, you're not on top of things. You're not trying hard enough. And then, of course, the whole, God forbid there's any privilege that you have, the idea of, you shouldn't feel like this because you can turn on the lights and you're not carrying water 20 miles, right? And sort of, how do you navigate those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's complicated. And then what we do is we just do what we always do when something's complicated emotionally, is we just pick the super highway, which is the way we see everyone else doing it, right?
And those super highways in our own brain, right? Like we have emotional reactions that are triggers that send us on kind of our own emotional roller coasters. That I can tell you that nothing changed my therapy practice like having kids or working with parents in parenting, because what I realized in those two things is that the key to parenting is not getting obedient behaviors out of our kids, or not having perfectly developed children or star children that do everything right. The key to successful parenting is being able to self-regulate myself, manage my own emotions separately from my kiddos roller coaster. We start with kind of pathologizing or thinking about the kid's tantrum or the misbehavior or the whatever, and the path to interacting with those behaviors kind of successfully require me to hold a separate basket for my own emotional response system. And I don't know if you found this to be true, but I think that we get triggered from our own childhood stuff, our own developmental stuff at each developmental stage of our kids. It awakens everything, right? And so there's a soup or a mixture happening in any parenting moment, in any parenting relationship moment, of what my kid brings to the table and what I bring to the table. And as the grown-up in the situation, as the person that signed on the dotted line to help coach this human being from infancy to adulthood and help them learn emotional regulation, and wanting them to be able to emotionally regulate when they can't have the red cup, or they can't manage the input of online school, or whatever the thing may be. If I want to expect that or coach that in them, I have to be able to do it in myself. And that is hard, like being able to do both of those simultaneously.
Yeah. And I would say, TMI or not, I did my own therapy on that very thing. because of, to your point, I grew up in a household that, my mom has a mental illness. And so she, I just didn't really grow up with how is my emotions separate from what's going on. I didn't grow up with a really intact ability to not walk into a room and find the person that's sad and make that mine. I didn't really grow up with that. And so I sort of became this person that would always have that metaphor of taking on other people's stuff right? It wasn't separate, and sort of did my own therapy. And it's funny that you mentioned that with parenting, that, it is such an important thing to sort of make sure that in an effort to be close and in an effort to hear and listen and be loving and receptive and all these sort of 2020 parenting goals, that you are separate, that, and they, and really saying that's yours and this is mine, and I can still be here for you, right? I can still listen to you, but it's also not mine, right? And I think it's interesting, not just as a parent, but as a woman. I mean, I think, it's really hard to talk about parenting as a female and not have it sort of also be intertwined with sort of expectations of being a female today, right? Is sort of this whole idea of no, I give all of myself to nurture and give. And that's a measure of my success, or that's my role, or, and so it makes it even harder depending on what your experiences were growing up, and then cultural, that how much of that you bring to parenting, right?
You're parenting two boys, I'm parenting two boys.
Yeah.
And I think that practice that we have, or that idea that developed in parenting, that I'm a good parent if I meet all your needs all the time, I give you all of me. Anything that is me is done in the quiet of night while you're sleeping, so you can't see. If I'm available, meaning not physically at work or, compromised in some way, I am meeting your needs. And I think so deeply about how that trains our boys to see women and to see ourselves and to see their role in relationships, and how important it is for mom to live and give the message that I matter in this relationship, that my needs matter in this relationship, and that your needs and my needs are separate. And we're in relationship, living in the same house. And so they're kind of intertwining, and we need to be teaching our kids, especially our boys, how to see that and hold space for other people's needs and ideas and thoughts, and kind of how to integrate that into their experience and development, as well as empowering ourselves to understand that me taking care of myself is good parenting. Me being separate from my kids is good parenting. That has gotten lost in our parenting culture.
And I think, when I hear you say that, it's an interesting thing, because I know that that's integral to your parenting. It's integral to my parenting. It's honestly who I am. So but I also, think that to some parents, they'd hear that and be like, oh, just another thing I have to do is, I have to model, right? But I actually think you can flip like anything on its head and say, no, that's actually super cool, right? Like, you get to take care of yourself, be yourself, right? Continue to get stronger, continue to grow with your true self, and be a parent. Like, you get to do both. That's super cool, right? Like, that's awesome, right? So go do that.
Both makes the other one easier, right?
And it makes it better, right? Especially parenting boys. I say all the time that, I want to put boys into the world who are A, B, C, and D, right? And part of what I also want to do is for them I want to model behavior of an independent, emotionally regulated, not always her best self, but takes responsibility when not, female, right? I want that for them, so that the females that they come across in their life, whether it's a partner or it's a friend or it's a colleague, that's what their normal is, right? And that's cool. So by me being my true self, I can make them a better human, a better male. That's okay. So, right?
Yeah.
Like I give myself permission to go for a run with Darcy every Sunday. And so then that means I'm also modeling, you know, good behavior and health and time with a good friend to my boys. And that means I'm doing a good job as a parent too. Awesome. You know, versus the narrative in that superhighway, which is no, you don't, you know, you're a bad person. You should be, you know, you should be making bacon and eggs for your boys, right?
Right.
You know,
Anyone who knows me knows that my kids spent so much time first in a jogging stroller,
yeah,
second hanging out at the track while I ran around in circles, even if they didn't want to be there, right? Like, I go to your sports. This is important time for me.
yeah, yeah,
So you get to come along while I do this thing that's really important to me. And
yeah,
they'd be bored and sitting around and whatever, and eventually like timing me or running with me,
yeah,
or they just need to fend for themselves while I take care of myself. And it doesn't need to be um, explained away or hidden as
no,
anything more than just like, it's an important part of who I am. And that means it's important to the family culture and the family system just as much as your sports activities, interests. Living out loud is kind of one of my favorite phrases with parenting, that our
mm-hmm.
children become who we are, right? Not what we tell them to be. So if I
Mm-hmm.
tell them, kind of going back to self-regulation, if I tell my toddler to self-regulate, control your anger, use your words,
Mm-hmm.
calm your body, I can say those things all I want. But if they see me using
Yeah,
my words, calming my body, using my breath, if they see me doing that in action, if I can say, whoa, my body's feeling really out of control, I'm going to take some moments and deep breathe. You want to come sit with me while I take some deep breaths?
yeah,
Your toddler or kid will actually start to imprint that on their brain in a way that just
yeah,
telling them to do it or like helping them do it, especially if we're telling them to do it while we're over here completely dysregulated,
yeah,
right? And by
yeah,
dysregulation, I can look like I'm calm, but that thing that happens in our bodies when we
yeah,
get tight, kind of breathy, to me,
mm-hmm.
I feel really like frozen and
Mm-hmm.
icy inside. Kids' brains pick up on it, right?
Yeah,
They're in tune to our micro cues, and so they're feeling that dysregulation, even if we're not completely like going bonkers around the room. And so
yeah,
learning how to notice that and melt it so that I
mm-hmm.
can make a decision. Is this a moment where I just need to step back and do some self-care and my kid's actually fine?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a time when I need to prioritize their needs and help them through something?
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting. I was thinking of a couple of things when you were talking. I think some of the things that struck me was this sort of idea of naming it, naming how you're feeling, naming what is going on. And I think that is super helpful because I don't, you know, children don't understand that, right? And so if over and over it's naming, like, when they're calm, you felt sad, you felt frustrated, right? Sort of that naming how I feel. So it gets to be this normal thing to listen to how you feel. But then also another word I thought of when you were talking was permission, right? So I'm naming it, but I also have permission to feel mad. I have permission to feel irritated. Like
Mhm.
that, those are all great, right? It's not like must be great, happy, calm all the time, right? That, and then also modeling again that when I feel all those things, then there's this space for noticing and then choosing how to get yourself to a better place. So what your reset buttons are that are healthy, right?
Mhm.
And sort of continuing to sort of raise kids in that with that idea. And it's just like anything you practice you get better at. And also with that, the permission to not always be great at that, right? Like
Mhm.
I think it's really important to say there are many times that you, like last night was a perfect example. I have late clinic on Tuesday. I am working for 14 hours. It is emotionally and physically exhausting. I come home totally tapped out where my mother, like, bathtub is not full. And, you know, I came home and the boys had two chores and they did not do them. Right. And so that right? I felt it, I named it. And my first thing was to do what I don't want to model was, you had chores, you didn't do them. I don't want to come home and see this. I worked too hard, right? Like the sort of like, I'm going to make you feel bad. But then I went into my room, I sat down, did the sort of 5 breaths and did the like, I know where I'm at. I didn't want to be there. That's not what I want to do, right? And then came back and named it, right? And it was so much more powerful. Yeah. And could some people have looked at that and been like, you weren't as mindful and didn't hear your emotions? No. What I did say was I came back and said to my son, you know what? I'm sorry for my reaction. I didn't, I had a long day. I was hoping this would be done. It wasn't. I'm disappointed, but you don't need, I probably should have stepped away 5 minutes sooner. It can be hard, can it? And they'll say, yep, it's hard, right? Because they'll remember the last time when they were mad and they, went to that space. It's just so valuable to do that too, to give yourself permission to not have the gold medal at that, right? Because I think that's a really, really hard thing to do, right? To sort of recognize how you feel, hold space, pause, and then reset in a way that's healthy, and do that consistently throughout your day. And that you're going to fail. You're going to fail sometimes. But the key is to come back and say, I take ownership of that. I didn't react as my best self, but there's room in this relationship because of how it's been set up to do that. Next time I'm going to see if I can get it, better. Right. And over and over and over again, it's just so cool to see, not only am I becoming a better person by doing that, but they are too. Right. The whole family unit of like, this is what I want to be and I'm trying, but it's hard. Yeah. Right.
So I like to clarify that I don't think self-regulation means never being angry at our kids, never being annoyed or frustrated or sad or hurt. Like those are all completely normal human emotions that happen within the context of any relationship. So if we actually got that gold star and was completely, if I was completely regulated meaning pleasant and accepting and neutral in all the interactions with my kids, I think I would do them a really big disservice, in the same way that if I am unknowingly dysregulated in an abusive way, I do them a disservice, right?
Yeah.
Both of those things fail to teach them how they can manage their emotional reactions within the context of a relationship. And that's the thing that we're looking for. We're not hoping that our children never feel angry. We're not hoping that our children never feel disappointed in a relationship. We're not hoping that they never express frustration or anger or sadness in a impromptu kind of way, right?
Yeah.
What we're hoping for is that they have an awareness of how their emotional expression impacts the other person, and that they have an awareness of where their emotional reactions are coming from, and that they can do repair work when needed, that they can connect, that they can understand that relationships are dynamic and we're going to fail each other and we're going to hurt each other, and that there is no shame in going back and saying, hey, I did that wrong. Let me try again. And so when we have moments like you had, I got emotional, or I got intense in my emotions and I reacted. And then I said, oh, wait, this isn't working for this relationship dynamic. Let me model how to regulate, how to take accountability for that, and then how to go back and not only address the problem, meaning the chores weren't done, but the emotional dynamic that happened between me and my kid. I yelled at you. I don't like when I do that. That's not how I wanted to express myself. Let me start over, right? Let's repair that. And when that becomes easily accessible, right? That this humanness and the interactions, and it's okay that you disappointed me, right? I really love if you did your chores every day, but like, it's okay to disappoint me. It's okay to mess up. That's part of development. It's part of being a human. It's part of interacting within the family system. And we're not looking for perfection or obedience in our children. We're looking for those developmental moments, those keys where we're interacting with our humanness and our relationships with each other and with our children in a way that helps us all learn those skills of emotional regulation, kindness, empathy, communication. I want to teach someone who's kind and empathic and caring and communicative and can stand up for themselves and can take responsibility. And in that moment that you described, that's what you taught.
But it also required me to be also okay to not be perfect, not that thing that we were talking about before of like giving myself permission to also do that work too at the same time, right? That's 100%, just like you said, that is 100% okay. And, the other thing I was thinking of too is that, and I feel like in an effort to sort of understand the changing emotions with COVID and all that's done in terms of isolation and more time together, bringing all of this into that, one of the things that has been so helpful that came to mind when you were just talking is this sort of global idea of being present, sort of the mindfulness, right? Of, recognizing the situation you're in, how you're feeling, and permission and then listening. I mean, it's just been so valuable to have so much less noise, I have to say. The lemonade from the lemons is that I feel like, I guess I could say I thought I was always a good listener, but I am pretty much like sit with one of my boys every night now and just listen, and also name some emotions and just listen. How was the day? Let's list quickly all the things that suck about COVID, right? And, and they won't like volunteer and I'll volunteer. And then it just all, right? It's like that same thing of like permission of like, here's all my emotions and they're not all warm and fuzzy and rosy. What do you think about that? And, and they'll sort of say, oh, this is cool, So when I have those moments with my boys, I feel like I'm absolutely doing everything right when I'm being imperfect and admit it and present, and that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to fail to do it, right? Mm-hmm. But more so than when they get, I buy them the jeans they want, or, it feels so much more real. I can just feel it in my heart, that was such a valuable circumstance. And what it involved was me not being perfect, me being okay with not being perfect, right? Me admitting that I need to reset, that I'm not, and that we connected and talked about it. How cool is that? Right?
How cool is that? How cool if we could all carry that as the parenting goal, right? Mm-hmm. As the thing that I am excited about for this parenting adventure, that I am excited about the relationship aspect. To do that, I think we really have to, going back to a thing you said in the very beginning, is hold that separateness, right? I am a separate human being from you. Mm-hmm. We have children so that they can leave us, right? And they can't leave us when we're like holding on so tight and seeing ourselves as solely as their mom or as a product of their existence, right? And that's,
yeah, I mean, I think if you don't do that, then that you're just delaying the work, right? Right? It's like, okay, then I'm going to have to do a ton of work when they move out, right? Or right? Because I'll look around and be like, think, what is it that I do?
I love that question. What is it that I do? I feel like we could do a whole nother segment on kind of the identity of the transition of the identity of moms.
Yeah, and I will say, here's another thing on that topic that I say a lot in my Well Child, creating space to hear about parenting and growth and developmental changes, and then also giving suggestions and just honestly, the psychology of parenting. And I don't know that anybody prepared me for that in training, that's what I do a lot. And what is it that I do? I think that so much of life in general, but also in parenting, is that all this stuff we're talking about, it's not like you just get it, you name it, oh great, I figured out all of that, right? And now it's on the shelf, and now what do I do, right? I don't ever have to revisit that, right? It's this constant, like, yeah, I totally had this, I thought I had this figured out, I have all, I had time for myself, I was giving myself permission, I was doing mindfulness, I was listening. And then I don't know it all. I just lost it all. And now I gotta come back. And like, right, is it sort of like, this isn't like, yeah, you do this work and you're good. There's also tremendous value to just be like, oh wait, I know. But the hope is that, just like anything, that you get better at recognizing when you're like, oh wait, I don't have anything. I just went through a period where my kids were everything, and I was following them around, and my husband was everything, or my partner was everything, and my work was everything. And I just, whoa. And that there's room for that too. And I think that's really important to say. And I say in my Well Child checks too, that like, oh, isn't that interesting? You had it and then it changed and now you don't have it. That's the way it goes,
Continually shifting evolution that is beautiful, is painful, is a burnt sugar cookie.
Yeah.
It's all of it.
Fun chatting. Yeah.
Heather, thank you so much for talking.
You're welcome.
with me. I think this was great. I hope we can do it again.
Yeah. I loved it. Yes. We'll see you later. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.